Oh, you did really good job today. You guys are ready. You're settled for this one. Well, then, instead of waiting, I am going to jump right into it. You all have the privilege today of getting a sneak peek at some upcoming poll results from PACE and the USC Rossier School of Education. And Morgan Polikoff is going to present those to you. So, Morgan.
Thank you. So this is one instance where we would like you not to tweet because these results are embargoed until 12:01 a.m. on Monday, when the report and the top line and crosstabs will go live. This is the PACE USC Rossier Poll. It's a poll of registered California voters. It's been conducted annually, or mostly annually, since 2012. It's an online poll conducted by Tulchin Research, a very reputable polling firm. We update the poll every year. We work together. It's actually one of my favorite things that I get to do each year. So we have a mixture of new and legacy questions on state and national education policy issues. This year is really the first time we did some higher education issues as well. This year we also got some additional support to do an oversample for the Los Angeles region. I'm not going to be presenting results there, so any region-specific results here are just based on the regular poll, not the oversample. And as I said, please no tweeting any of the results. You could tweet that you are hearing about this poll, and everyone should be very excited for the results, but you can't tweet any of the findings. Okay, so I'm going to give you 9 findings in 9 minutes. First, we polled California voters about a range of issues that they might care about, that they might be concerned about. In education, K-12 into higher education, and gun violence in schools is the top issue that voters are concerned about. It is the top issue for Republicans. It is the top issue for Democrats. It is the top issue for all racial ethnic groups. This figure shows 56% of respondents said, gave this item a 10 on a 1 to 10 scale in terms of the importance, and 88% of voters said 6 or greater. I'm not going to read down the list there. You can see that it's in the report, but I will return to this figure, or some of the findings from this figure coming up. So gun violence is very important, and voters support many measures to reduce gun violence. So we asked about some specific measures. We asked about, so the most popular is expanding public mental health options in your area, which is supported by 87% of respondents, 55% strongly. But there's majority support for 5 of these. So expanding mental health, banning and confiscating assault rifles or other high-capacity firearms, practicing active shooter drills more often in your schools, installing metal detectors in your schools, hiring additional armed security in your schools. There's majority support for all of those. The only one where there wasn't majority support was allowing your local school teachers to bring a gun into the classroom. Only 31% of voters. There were some partisan splits on these items, as you might guess. So there was a partisan split on that last item, with Republicans in favor, 55% of Republicans, and Democrats opposing it, 76% of Democrats opposing it. There was also, by the way, majority support among Republicans for the banning and confiscating guns item, 50% to 44%. So even among Republicans, that has majority support. Number 2, the second most important issue on this figure, if I were to go back, is college affordability. So voters are very concerned about college affordability. It was the second priority back on slide 1. We asked about 6 different possible priorities for the new governor, and improving quality in K-12 was first, with 31% of people listing that as their first priority and 19% as their second. But in second place was keeping college affordable, with 25% listing that as their first priority and 17% as their second. And the college affordability concern was especially prominent among the groups that you would expect. People with children. It was the top concern for voters age 18 to 49. Yes, and those were the two main groups. Number three, early childhood education is a somewhat lower priority for voters. So actually, if you go back to the last slide, you can see the two ones at the bottom there are, the one a third from the bottom there is expanding pre-K education programs for children aged 3 to 5, and the one at the bottom is providing prenatal care and early childhood programs for children 0 to 3. We asked people straight up, should California increase spending on child care and educational programs for children 0 to 5, with really nothing about how much it would cost or anything like that. And support was only 47% to 35% opposed. When we asked those people who supported how we should pay for it, they were about approximately split between increasing taxes and spending less on other programs. Number four, support is high for the local control funding formula despite low awareness. So awareness is up a bit from previous years. 25% of voters said they had heard or read a little about LCFF, up from 17% last year. Awareness of local meetings has increased from 11% in 2016 to 21% this year. And among those who have heard of LCFF, 61% have a positive view of the policy versus 18% with a negative view. And support also remains high when we offer a description of the policy. Number five, familiarity with the California school dashboard is low, and it really has not changed since last year. 46% of respondents said they had heard of the dashboard. Last year, I believe it was 45%. Of those, the total number of people who have visited the dashboard is really unchanged as well. So even among those who have heard of it, only about a third of them claimed to have actually visited it. We did, however, randomly split the sample and show one half a picture of the old dashboard and one half a picture of the new dashboard, and voters were more favorable towards the new dashboard. So it was 65 to 19 for the new dashboard, a favor to oppose, and 52 to 25 for the old dashboard. Now, certainly awareness and use is much higher for parents, and we talk about that in the report. Interestingly, voters have increasingly positive views of California schools. So some of these numbers, that top bullet doesn't sound like a lot. Only 7% of voters give California schools an A, but the previous high was 3%. And we've been asking this question since 2012. And there were corresponding drops in C and D grades, but parents are quite a bit more positive than the general public. So 46% of parents say California schools deserve an A or B versus just 15% who say a D or F. And when you ask about local schools, 63% of parents say local schools deserve an A or B versus 8% who say a D or F. That trend of rating your local schools higher is very common and appears on all of these kinds of polls. Number seven, this poll was actually in the field right when the LA strike was happening. We didn't ask specific questions about that strike, but we did ask general questions about teachers' right to strike, and there's overwhelming support for teachers' right to strike no matter how we ask the question, and even when we prompted that it might, be inconvenient for parents and families and that sort of thing. So as you can see, depending on how we ask the question, it was about 65-20. Number eight, voters support changes to Proposition 13. So we asked about the split roll, which is likely to be on the 2020 ballot. Voters are supportive of a repeal of the split roll by 55 to 33 margin. Support is, so we broke out support here by region in the top and by party at the bottom. You can see that certainly Democrats are much more favorable towards this policy, but you're still getting approximately 40% of Republicans who favor repealing that portion of Proposition 13, and you can actually see large geographic differences, which probably mostly correspond to the partisan differences. And number nine, we asked questions about affirmative action because of the ongoing Supreme Court case involving Harvard University. We asked about this question a couple different ways. So one, we asked directly about that court case, and we explained it a little bit and asked whether Harvard should be allowed to use race in admissions. And when we asked it that way, most people said no. So it was right about 50% of people said they should not use race in admissions, and about 40% of people said they should. We also asked people general questions about should colleges and universities offer admissions advantages to students from various groups, and that's what this figure is showing you. And so the vast majority of people said actually, yes, colleges and universities should offer admission advantages, especially to children from low-income families. You've got 72% support. Children from rural or underserved areas, 71% support. Children from underrepresented racial or ethnic groups, 64% support. Much more favorable than people are about offering admission advantages to children of that university's graduates, elite athletes, or children of that university's donors, which, as we know, are all very widespread practices. So those are 9 findings, and that was maybe more like 11 minutes, but that's okay. So do you want to introduce the discussion?
We are going to give you time to discuss, but I actually thought there might be some questions since you did such a quick and thorough job of going through. So we'll take a couple of questions for Morgan if there are any in the room about these. Yeah.
Well, I mean, these numbers are not, I mean, the majority here, as I said, was 55-33, so that's not an overwhelming majority and suggests that there will need to be a pretty vigorous defense, at least to me. I don't know, other people who are even more familiar with the state of California politics. It's not obvious that it's a slam dunk from these results. So I don't think we asked anything specifically about college and career readiness. Well, so we did ask this question. So so we asked people about about their concerns, and we split out career readiness and college readiness, and people slightly favored career readiness here. More people said that was their top priority, but that's not a very big difference. So I think that matches what I've seen in other polls. People tend to want to focus on careers a little bit more than college readiness when they're asked those questions, but it's not a big difference.
Can you get into the questions dealing with it was mid-level of the schools that are not doing so well? It was a mid-level priority on your first slide. So supporting struggling schools.
Mm-hmm.
Were there some detailed questions you could share with us?
So we did not ask any questions about interventions or ways to support struggling schools. I think we have asked some of those questions in the past, maybe last year, but I don't have that information in front of me.
Same with school discipline. Were there specific questions?
So we did not ask school discipline questions. I can't remember if we've ever asked questions about like restorative justice or anything like that. I don't recall having asked those questions in the past.
Yeah, Phil.
Morgan, you have 3 questions up there on charter schools. Any trends over the past couple of years you've seen about increasing or decreasing?
Charter schools. So I don't have all the numbers right at hand. My sense was that partisan splits on charter schools have been widening, but also actually that Republican support for charter schools has also ticked down a little bit. I think it's ticked down more among Democrats. But as you can see, that was so expanding school choice and increasing the number of public charter schools were the lowest 2 priorities on this first question. And so there doesn't seem to be a lot of enthusiasm for continued expansion of school choice.
Right here.
Whoop, Mike.
On the college and career question that came up, I just noticed that the career data seemed like more people thought high schools should be getting kids ready for careers versus college. First of all, is that a valid statement based on the kind of questions you asked, or is it giving us some other indication that what the public is saying about college versus career?
Yeah, so a number of polls, so Education Next, for instance, does a poll, and I think Phi Delta Kappan has also asked similar questions, and my sense is that almost always when it's asked, people actually prioritize career readiness over college readiness on these polls, and we find that here, although again, this difference between the 3rd row and the 5th row is pretty small. Yeah, so we've got crosstabs on everything, and those will be posted as well as the top line, so you can dig in for yourself. And historically, what we've done is then we'll write like a series of blog posts about various issues and drilling deep on what are we seeing in terms of demographic splits. And there certainly are some interesting demographic splits. Another question that I didn't highlight here was we asked people, how confident are you that getting a college degree will lead you to a middle-class life? And the answer is not really very confident. So on the 1 to 10 scale, I think the average was about a 5.6, but there were some big demographic splits there with like Black and Hispanic families being much more confident that it would lead to a middle-class life, and white and Asian families much less confident. So that was one where the racial split stood out to me, but I'm sure those appeared elsewhere as well. Oh, go for it. No.
Wait for the mic.
Questions? Oh, sorry. I'm new to PACE, so thank you. Have you asked the early care and education questions before, and did they move in either direction? It looks a little different than other polling I've seen about early education. So I'm just curious.
Is David around? Have we asked early education questions before?
Asked those questions 3 or 4 years ago, but I don't, off the top of my head, I can't say whether the numbers have changed.
It's lower support than I expected on that.
I'll take just one last question here.
So, of the parents who were polled, was there a segment out by how old their children were and in what grade level? And then also, related to that question, if there was there any difference in like the college affordability questions or the concern about early childhood education based on the age ranges of their children?
So we could get close to that by doing like a two-way cross of parents by age, but we did not. I don't think we don't have children's age. We have parents of children in schools, and then we also know what kind of school they are, whether it's a charter, a private, or a traditional public. But that's all we know about the children. And you do see very big splits on parents of children in schools versus other groups in terms of their attitudes towards a number of these policies, for sure.
So a lot of these other questions a lot of the questions in the room, some will be answered by the report that comes out on Monday, so please keep an eye out. And then over the month or so that follows, we'll have these more specific issue pieces that dig in more to these questions of differences in demographics, differences by state. But now we'd like for you to go back to your tables and think about what this poll and these poll results mean for the state. Specifically, what your recommendations are for new policymakers, so Governor Newsom, Superintendent Thurmond, new legislators, about what actions they should take based on these results. And this can be kind of how do you legislate or how do you make cases to voters or any other number of things. On your table, you have index cards and you have a white bowl. Please fill out some of your thoughts on those index cards and then put them in the white bowl. You'll have about 12 minutes to do this before our breakouts.